Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of the Transfer Portal CFB podcast presented by NoContextCFB. I'm your host Dylan Ruben King. We're having a stacked show today. It's been a bit since we've kind of had a little bit of a stall with the bowl season. Now the Texas Bowl last night was the last one. Now we've got a couple days before the national championship. I'm joined today by Adam Coleman. Adam, how you doing, man?
Doing good. I'm doing good. College season's almost over. We got one game left, so it's kind of bittersweet, but I think it'll be a good one. I'm excited for it. It was a good bowl season, a lot of good games, and nothing to complain about.
You got two if you count the FCS championship as well. So if
You're
you're into
right.
that, there's two for you. Andrew Wilson, we got dual Andrews today. Andrew W and Andrew D. We'll start with W. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Just ready for, our final championship games, and then it's gonna be a long off season. So I'm just ready to watch these final games.
Feeling like that Fanville commercial where all the people in the snow globe are like, it's going to be a long off season. What do we do? That whole thing. Andrew D, man, you had an eventful last couple of days. How are you doing?
It's kind of what you said about the whole, we got FCS title game Saturday. We got the playoff championship on Monday. And you're right. It's been a pretty eventful last couple of days for me. We'll go into it. Let's just say I had a bit of a good time last night, a much better time than I thought.
Yeah, it's been a really fun last couple weeks, a really eventful bowl season for us. If you've been following along, we've been previewing every single bowl game that hasn't been canceled, obviously. We had all of those up on our site, put them all over Twitter, and we actually had a couple of people go to a couple of bowl games as well. Andrew talked about it before in a previous podcast about going to the New Orleans Bowl, and yesterday, at the time of recording, he went to the Texas Bowl. So, Andrew, I want to give you the floor, talk about your experience and, your second time around being a media member, but this time on your own. It seemed like it was a much better, much more luxurious experience from what I saw.
Yeah, exactly. That was exactly it. I mean, like, if you listen last time when me and Brian we went to the New Orleans Bowl, took us 8-hour drive to get to New Orleans from Houston. Think about it, he had it worse when he had to drive in from San Antonio. We had rain the whole way. And once we finally got to the Superdome, it was a hassle to get our credentials. And then, when we got to the press box, all they had for food was just chips and soda. And we obviously got onto the field, which is great. It was awesome. And, that experience was great. But last night was just a little bit different. I picked up my credential last week around Thursday or Friday or so. I think it was like day before New Year's. And it was pretty hassle-free. Just told them, Transfer Portal CFB, that was it. Got me the credential. Went in pretty early, about an hour before kickoff. Got to the press box, and instantly, they just treated me like royalty from the start. I honestly couldn't thank the NRG staff, the reps from Tax Act and Texas Bowl, and all those guys. They all did a tremendous job of, I'm not just me, but just all the media members that were there in general. Second I got in, funny story, guy, he was checking the credential. He says, "Oh, transfer portal." Keep in mind, older guy. I hate the transfer portal, and I was like, "What the hell did we do, man?" Like, that was literally the first instant. Like, what the hell did we do? Like, did you go to Rice or what was it? I mean, I don't know what the hell happened here, but then I was like, then he said, clarify, no. I've seen you guys. You guys are funny. Okay, I'm talking about the extra transfer. And I was like, okay, fine, whatnot. Get to the press box, get to my seat, and they literally have everything personalized, own spot, own name card, all these things. It was tremendous. And I actually got some of the stuff. So when I got to my desk, remember those paper football games that you played maybe like when you were in middle or high school? Well, they had this, one of these, is they call it a Fiki football, and it comes with an actual, gridiron thing on the back. So really cool. They gave us some stat sheets. Here's the stat sheet of all of the complete roster. Very handy. It was very handy when I was when I was live tweeting the game, because I'll be honest with you, some of LSU's players' names are very hard to spell. Here's the actual program. For some reason, there's like no LSU players on here. It's like just Kansas State. I don't know why they do that, but essentially talking about the teams, Texas Bowl's history. Now, this is a bit more of the surprising thing. This is the media guide that they are handing out. And for those that are watching a video, like this is a pretty big thing. Like this looks like a pretty big book. Like it's an encyclopedia for the teams playing, and that was honestly really awesome. It was more for K-State than LSU, but it was really awesome. The guys were there. The funniest thing about the whole thing was, even when I was just sitting there, I was talking to a guy next to me. He was part of the broadcast team of Houston Baptist. He was like, "Yeah, the transfer. I've seen you guys on Twitter," and I was like, "Cool," and that's like one of the first things that's pretty unique. You meet somebody that you don't know, and they tell you that they already love your stuff. I felt like a celebrity off the bat. A couple minutes later, someone from Reddit CFB comes up to me and like, "Oh my God, are you with the transfer portal?" I'm like, "Well, yes, I am." That's like we're almost cementing celebrity status at this point. She's like, "Oh my God, I've seen your stuff. I love your stuff." Shout out Allison from Reddit CFB if you're listening to this. She also went to UH. We had a good conversation about that. She was tremendous. Everything she's talking about how much she loved her stuff, and I asked her like, "Hey, when did you start hearing about it?" She's like, "I saw something early in the season, pretty about UH that I thought was pretty funny." I was like, she read my Rice Stadium review. That could only be it. But no, as far as the games, so much food. Literally, as the tour guy was taking me through the press box, all you can eat barbecue pit to start off the day, like just to start off pregame. And my God, it was good. They had the whole fixing of mac and cheese, briskets, sausage, everything that stereotypes Houston, Texas in terms of the food scene. Then at halftime, they got us some Mexican food too. And my God, there was so much of it. There were so many media members there. I met a couple of them. I didn't even ask where they were from. That's my bad. But, had some really good conversations. It was a lot of fun, really good way to connect with people. And and the great thing about the press box that I don't think a lot of people realize is you're literally on the same floor as where, coaching staffs will be, offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators, the shots who, you see in the sky, you're literally right behind those doors. Any given moment, I could have plunged right through them doors and get on television. But, obviously I'm respectful. If I had K-State minus 6.5, I mean, maybe I would have considered. No, I'm just kidding. But it was a lot of fun too. Like I said, staff were tremendous. We got on the field. I will say this: they were very protective on the field more than what they were in New Orleans, because I felt like in New Orleans we could have just walked wherever we wanted to. When I was at the Texas Bowl last night, you could only go to certain areas of the field, and even then, you still had to watch where you're going because there's still security guards all over the place. There are the people that are about to bring out the scaffold for the trophy ceremony. We weren't even allowed to stand behind the team's benches, which is okay. I'm okay. I don't want to interfere with any game plan or anything that's going on. So I'm fine with that. I got really close to Mike the Tiger a few times. He's honestly so much more awesome in person than you see on television. I honestly thought he was kind of overrated on television, but seeing him up close and doing, mascot shenanigans, it's also really fun. And then seeing the trophy presentation up front was really awesome. Skylar Thompson was really taken in the moment. Shout out Deuce Vaughn. He had a 4-touchdown performance last night. Also, he's going to be a top 5 back one in the next season. No question about it. All purpose back, first team All-American this season for all purpose players. It's really hard to imagine he was the 91st ranked running back in the 2020 class. And he's only a true sophomore, was just a true sophomore. So shout out to him. So in terms of everything, it was great. My criticism mainly is, why the hell did this have to be an 8:00 Central Time kickoff? This is 9:00 for the Eastern time zone folk. I mean, 7-5 versus 6-6. Why the hell did I didn't get home till 1 a.m. last night, and I still had to get up for work at 5 a.m. this morning. Okay, I'm essentially running on about 400 milligrams of caffeine right now that I drank from 7 or 7:30 this morning, but. In terms of what they did last night, it was phenomenal. The on-field experience was phenomenal. this is a city that I love. This is a bowl game that I'm very familiar with for many years. Yeah, this was just checked all the boxes. Really couldn't thank everybody there enough.
What blew me away about that was you said you had a tour guide going up through the press box. I've only done one game at the press box at Autzen Stadium, and we were on our own. I think everybody just kind of assumes we're all like seasoned vets at that point. We don't really need a tour, but that's really cool. That kind of stands out.
I think you got to consider the fact that, this is a national, broadcasted game. Chances are, approved media members that come to this game, they're probably from out of city, out of state. They're probably not familiar with the press box. But this dude was super cool. Like, he was just like, yeah, there's your food. Go ahead, eat up as much as you want. There are the tables if you want to sit there, or if you want to sit by your seat in the press box in your assigned seat, that's cool too. They were just, he essentially told me, do whatever the hell you want, just be respectful, essentially. And couldn't thank him enough for it. And still, the fact that it's honestly a different feeling when you have people coming up to you and be like, oh my god, are you with the transfer portal? Like, I thought that was celebrity status, to be honest with you. I thought that wasn't even possible. I thought that only happened if I was a millionaire, to be honest with you. But the fact that that thing actually happens, we really, everything about it makes it possible. It's the following on Twitter. It's the fact that everybody does the reviews or the previews for the bowl games, audio production, video production, people keeping up with the writing. It's what all comes together to make it what we've become only this far out. We only started this really about 3 months ago, and we still have 9 months to go, essentially. Well, maybe more like 8 months until next season starts. Who knows what more can grow within those 8 months?
Yeah, I definitely just want to quickly say that to anybody that's obviously everybody that's contributed to the transfer portal and what it is right now. I mean, thank you so much for contributing. All of you guys as well. You guys have done a lot, so thank you guys. I'm just thinking back to the morning of August 15th, which was the morning that we launched. I was sitting in this chair, middle of the night, trying to, finish the final touches of the website. And then we lost power for, I think like 2.5 hours. So I had to stay up until like 3.5 hours because I wanted the damn thing published at like 9 Pacific. And I had to stay up and like freak out, trying to make sure everything was right. I had everything saved, thankfully. But I was just, all that stuff was worth it for, getting to be able to go to a couple of bowl games and have people recognize our work. It's really cool. So, Andrew W., I want to get to you kind of, your recap of the year, because you're kind of a new guy in our group here. Adam and Andrew and I, we've kind of done the little thing with the picks for a few years now, and you kind of came along this year. So what has your experience been like joining our team, and what do you like most about it?
It's been amazing. It's been amazing, to say the least. It's a group, not even just like a group of people that just talk about college football. It's just a group of friends who know what they're talking about, and they just want to share it to other people and provide good content, which I love. It's always been great, just providing a new way to look at, especially my team, Minnesota, because that's what I wrote about a lot this year. But just to have a group of people who, very knowledgeable about the sport, very knowledgeable about the programs, and just to have a new light. I don't know what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is having something different, because we can always have a different insight to the sport that we all love. And I think that the transfer portal brings us something special, because we're not a massive media network that, only talks about some of the big teams. We also talk about, the FCS, the group of five, some of those players. We had, Bailey Zappi won our Colt Brennan Trophy for best group of five player. And I think that it's just been so nice to have a little bit of a refresher. We're not just talking about Alabama and Clemson. We're talking about the Western Kentuckys, the UTSAs.
I was looking back at our player interviews, and we only had, I think there was 9. We've only had one Power 5 player that we've interviewed. And that was Colin Wilder at the very end. So that was really cool that we had that focus because, like you said, not a lot of people have that. And Adam, you've been around for, pretty, I think since day one, since we've all kind of been talking in the group chat on Twitter. So what has it been like for you to kind of jump in and then mid-season take over doing video production? Like just kind of look back on everything that's been.
Yeah, it's been real exciting. This is something that we've talked about for a long time. It took us a while to get off the ground, but we got a good group. I think for the pretty much everybody that said they were in, they put it in their best effort. As far as the video stuff goes, no problem. I'm gonna keep growing on that front. Follow the YouTube, Spotify, Twitter, all that stuff. Next year, I think it's gonna take off even more. Honestly, I'm shocked that we were able to get credentials and stuff this early, especially to a game like LSU. And shout out to Andrew for that. But I think it's the sky's the limit. We've already had some big guests, some great guests that want to come back as well. So I think next year, I'm excited. I'm ready for it. I'm ready to see what we do and how we grow.
Press reporter to the moon, baby. Let's get it. I'm super excited for next year, man. Andrew D, you were at the game, so I'm wondering. I want to start with you because I'm not sure if you saw it while you were there, but kind of the next thing we want to talk about is Brian Kelly and this LSU team because it's their first losing season in I think since the late '90s. I think it was '99. But he said something on the broadcast that was a little interesting. He talked about the accent that everybody heard during the men's basketball game, trying to bring that LSU kind of Baton Rouge accent, but he's from Boston. And he said this thing about how Boston, there's not a very distinct accent or whatever it was that he said, which is blasphemy. But, when you got to your phone, you got to Twitter and you saw that clip, I mean, what was kind of going through your head there?
I laughed. To be honest with you, I did what most people didn't. That was laugh. I mean, that's honestly a freaking joke. I mean, I hate to put it this way, but if you're from a certain part of the country, you're gonna have an accent. I lived in Texas now for 15 years now. People here have an accent. I'm from the Midwest. Guess what? Different parts of the Midwest, they got accents. I mean, I look at this sometimes whenever I look back on it. Whenever I listen to our podcast, I gotta look at myself. I'm like, you haven't lived in Wisconsin in 15 years and you still have a lingering Midwest accent. There are times that I go to bars up in Wisconsin and they're like, I can tell you're not from here. And I'm like, yeah, I am. I just haven't lived here for X amount of time. They can tell that I have somewhat of a Texas accent. Anybody that's ever seen a Mark Wahlberg movie, guess what? Boston people have an accent. Let's just be honest, okay? That's the truth. Anyone that's ever seen John Cena on WWE, guess what? The Boston accent does come out every once in a while. Boston people got accents. I didn't hear the whole interview, but while they were on the air, I hope the announcers, they asked Brian Kelly, they should have asked him, do you happen to have your car keys on you? Just to see what he would have said if it finally would have, because that's the thing. Some people, and I can attest to this from personal experience. Some people, they can hide their accents, they truly can, but there are key words where how they say it, they can only say it in one way, and that one way is the only way you can bring the accent out of people. In terms of me, for example, there are times whenever I say Wisconsin, see, there you go. See, that's exactly what I'm talking about right there. I say that state's name, that O in the middle is going to come out. It's going to sound like, okay. Oh my God, it sounds disgusting. Just saying it. There are times where when I went to Wisconsin just last month, I literally caught myself being like, oh my God, I'm talking like these people. I talk like these people and I don't even realize. Brian Kelly, shut the hell up, okay? You have lived in the Midwest. If we're tying together Cincinnati and Notre Dame, you've been in the Midwest now for about 15 years. He's got some Midwest in him, okay? He's gonna deny, but he does, and he can have a bit of a Boston accent. He just is trying to hide it. Also, this whole I am here with my family, whatever BS he tried to give us at that basketball game, don't ever do that again, Brian. Okay, like I don't even think he's had a bucket of crawfish since he's been down there. It ain't even crawfish season yet.
Yeah, that was. I mean, I've interacted with a lot of people from Boston. I used to work at a sports store. We had this guy who was a regular that used to come in, and he was from Boston, diehard Patriots fan for 40 plus years, whatever it was. Used to buy all of our Patriots gear that we had, and he had the thickest. I'm talking Tommy Heinsohn kind of accent, like just that super thick. Like you have to listen to him a couple times to figure out what he says because it's just so thick. And the fact that he said that, like, not even just that it's not that strong, but the fact that it's not a distinct accent or whatever exactly that it was just blew my mind. So, I mean, Brian Kelly's walked into a lot already with LSU because the men's basketball game kind of got off to a weird start trying to recruit the fan base to, oh, hey, I've got the Baton Rouge accent down. But at the same time, LSU is just in this kind of interesting place. So, Adam, I want to start kind of with you. Just, where do you think this LSU program is with a new coaching staff, a really young team? Obviously, that absolute mess of a game with the scholarships and all that last night. So, just where do you think this program is, and where do you think it's headed with Brian Kelly?
Well, yeah, we're not going to count what happened last night. That was nothing you can really do about that. As far as where the program is, I still think they're kind of in purgatory. I haven't really looked at their recruiting. I don't think they're doing super well in recruiting right now. I'm gonna have to go back and check that, but I guess we'll find out how good of a coach Brian Kelly really is, how good he can relate to players. He said that wouldn't be a big deal being not from the South. I know living in the South, that Southern pride is a real thing. Maybe that's why he tried to have that accent, but we'll see. It's kind of hard to tell for me. That I do like some of the young pieces. I think Nussmeyer. I think he's pretty good. We'll see what he does next year if he wins the job, of course. But he's from the Dallas area. He played high school football up here, so I got to see him a little bit. We have to see. It's kind of hard to tell. I do like Brian Kelly. I think he's a good coach, so I think they'll be good eventually. When that is, I don't know. They got my Longhorns coming to the SEC soon, so they have a little bit more competition. But we'll see.
So to answer the question, currently on 24/7, they have the 18th ranked recruiting class, which
18th,
which that honestly feels super low compared
how
to
far is that? How many SEC teams are ahead of them? Do you know?
Tennessee at 15, Auburn at 13, Missouri at 12, Kentucky at 11. Do we want to count Oklahoma as SEC or no?
No.
Okay,
Not
good.
yet.
Okay. Georgia at 3, Alabama 2, Texas A&M at 1.
Yeah, see, that's not good. You can't be.
I feel like that. I think I just named like 10 right there, right off the bat.
Yep.
Almost, probably
Yeah.
like 7.
Yeah, when Florida was that low, we were killing them when they had that whole recruiting
Where's Florida?
fiasco.
I'm not even seeing Florida on this list right now. Hey, Florida's
Rightfully so.
Florida's 50th right now.
Rightfully, as they should be.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting about where LSU is they're, according to 247, they're 8th in the SEC. They haven't finished outside of the top 5 in the SEC since 2002. Obviously, I mean, we're in the early signing period just past that, so there's still a bit of a ways to go. They have 13 people signed, have a couple 5 stars. They're still doing their thing in Louisiana a little bit. They've signed 5 of the top 15 players. Alabama has 4. So, with Brian Kelly, that's going to be a big thing, is recruiting and keeping guys in Louisiana, and not just Louisiana, but in the South as well, that entire area. But the coaching staff, I'm a fan of so far. You have Matt House, defensive coordinator. He's the Chiefs inside linebacker. I'm a fan of that. Mike Denbrock has been around, Brian Kelly for a long time, both at Cincinnati and, at Notre Dame. And I'm a big fan of keeping Brad Davis on the staff as well, kind of serving as that interim coach and staying as the offensive line coach. So a lot of recruiting experience, a lot of NFL experience. I think for me, I think the word purgatory is appropriate, but I do think there is kind of this light because you have Brian Kelly coming in. I think he kind of gives them a little bit more hope than a lot of other programs, like a Florida with Billy Napier. I don't know if there's as much hope there. I think LSU, they're only a couple years removed from a national championship, and that feels like so long ago. The quarterback situation is going to be weird because you talked about Garrett Nussmeier. Miles Brennan's going to be coming back. Maybe he took his name out of the transfer portal. You have Walker Howard, who's a 5-star quarterback coming in. He's a Louisiana guy, so that's going to be really interesting. It feels like every year the LSU quarterback situation is wide open, except for the 1 year Joe Burrow destroyed the college football world. So Andrew, I want to.
Which Andrew?
You.
Okay, well, I guess I can answer whatever you got.
I just, I want to know what you think, the window is for LSU, because you have Alabama and Georgia who are at the top right now. It's their game right now. Texas A&M, you said they're number one in recruiting. Auburn's up there. Other programs are on the rise. So how long do you think it could take what do you think their window is to get back to not national championship? That's going to take a while, but just toward the top of the SEC again.
Truthfully, that is such a hard question to answer because I just don't know how Brian Kelly is going to affect recruiting. If I was a recruit in Louisiana, I think I would have rather played for Ed Orgeron than Brian Kelly. And the reason why I say that is because Ed Orgeron, maybe he could probably be the greatest high school head coach in the country because he's that type of guy. He's that type of prep guy, that pep. And here's the thing with Brian Kelly, and I said this ever since he was hired. You need to fit the demographic, and it's not just a matter of fitting the demographic. You have to get used to it. This is not the same as recruiting in Ohio or Indiana. When you're here in the South, it's about culture, and that's the main thing. Players that are committing to the likes of Texas or Texas A&M, they commit to those locations because of the culture that's within the cities, within the universities. That's why they're there. That is why I feel like you see Texas A&M players, Texas A&M commits going to their recruiting trips, and they just automatically click right off the bat because they fit the culture. It's what they want to see. With LSU, we're a bit of a, purgatory is the right word in terms of we don't know what culture LSU is right now. What I was going to bring up was their in-state recruiting right now. Yes, they got Will Campbell, who's a 5-star offensive tackle in LSU. That's massive. They do have Walker Howard. By the way, that Walker Howard, Brian Kelly dance video that they did together, one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life, but we're going to skip
Cringy.
Cringy, don't even just start with that. Couple other players. Okay, great. You got the top 2 players in the state of Louisiana, but this is where it kind of starts to fall off the cliff a little bit. You got Jacoby Matthews, who could still go to LSU, but apparently Texas A&M is still on his radar. Texas A&M is still getting guys in 2022. Think about that. Chaz Preston, who is a top 3 wide receiver in the country, going to Alabama. Le'Veon Moss, this is the biggest one. This is about as bad as it gets. Think about the best player within Baton Rouge, within LSU territory, not going to LSU, but Le'Veon Moss choosing to go to Texas A&M instead to play running back. That is, I think that is one of the most foretelling recruit commits of this entire cycle. Yeah, sure, Le'Veon Moss, he may not be the number 1 running back in the country, but the fact that you're getting your own in-town best player going to a division rival in Texas A&M, that is kind of the most foretelling for me. And you still got Kendrick Law going to Alabama. You still got Aaron Anderson going to Alabama. This is the same problem that I saw with Texas for a little bit. They're starting to pick it up now, but it's kind of the same thing what I was saying with Texas. You have to dominate your own state. Right now, LSU, they're not dominating their own state right now. And I kind of said this before. The 2 games that I've been credentialed to go to during this bowl season, the ranked Louisiana team was not LSU. It was the Louisiana Raging Cajuns. That also needs to tell a bit of a story right there. So not only are you not recruiting to the top of your ability in your own state, you're not finishing recruiting in your own state either. I think this is a bit more of the underrated aspects that we're talking about when it comes to LSU. LSU needs to fix the recruiting in state. Okay. Brian Kelly, if you got to chow down on all the gumbo, jambalaya, crawfish, I mean, look, crawfish season's about to start up in about a month or so. Yeah, guess what? This is about as good of a time to start picking it up, because Brian Kelly needs to understand what LSU culture is. He needs to understand what Southern culture is like. I'm not talking just Louisiana. LSU is notorious for picking players out of Florida, for picking players out of the state of Texas. And they're not doing that right now either. That's why they're 18th. That's why they're seventh best recruiting class in the SEC right now. Right now, it's just all about figuring out what the culture is for LSU, because I don't think anybody truly knows it. I don't even know if Brian Kelly knows it.
Yeah, I was gonna say that LSU is huge in Texas. I can go to Academy right now down the road, and there's a Texas A&M section, a UT section, and an LSU section. It's all just as big as the other. So I remember in high school, everybody wanted to go to LSU. It was LSU, it was Oregon. Those were the two, big schools. So yeah, the Southern culture here it's a big deal, and I don't think that faking it is the right way to do it, because I mean you can't really sell that. To be honest, it's going to come off as offensive more than anything.
If I was Walker, I would have decommitted right as soon as that.
Exactly.
If it was just Walker on that video, okay, cool. But if Brian Kelly just stood up on that stage, I would be like, dude, what the hell are you doing, man?
Imagine like your parents and stuff, they see that, it's like, yeah, you're not going there. We see what's going on. So he has to find out his own way to sell the program. But we'll see what happens. The recruiting this year really isn't his fault. Next year we'll really see how he does, though.
Andrew Wilson, I want to get to you because you're kind of sitting idly by over there. So I want to ask you the military, the $1 million question as well. I mean, this LSU team, a couple years removed, is going through a complete rebuild. So, how long do you think it takes? Do you like what they're doing? Do you think they're, in purgatory too?
I think you kind of have to think they're in purgatory, because as good as a coach as Brian Kelly has proven to be, LSU is in the toughest division in all of college football, because you got Alabama, you've got Texas A&M, who just had the best recruiting class ever. You've got teams like Auburn, who don't look great right now, but they can kick it up if Harsin decides to, be good. So LSU is in this situation where they're kind of, in between a rock and a hard place. Alabama is the hard place, A&M's is the rock, or I guess you can switch that around. Because not only is Alabama super dominant right now, they'll probably be super dominant in a few years. If Jimbo Fisher can develop the talent that he's gotten in the last year or two, and what he'll get next year, if he can develop that into amazing players to contend for a national title, then you're looking at LSU, who, I mean, we can view as one of the top programs you would want to go to if you were a 5-star. Like, just the atmosphere that Baton Rouge brings to a college football game, the facilities they have, Brian Kelly himself as an amazing coach. But then you also look at what's around them, and if you're having a tough time getting players from your own state, it's tough for me to think that, okay, you're going to, be great elsewhere. And that, like Adam said, 2022 to 2023, that's going to be a massive recruiting stage for Brian Kelly. If he can get this LSU team some more talent, I think they'll be fine. But right now, it's really tough to think that there'll be anything above Alabama or A&M.
And speaking of Alabama, we have one more game on the slate, and it's the national championship game. And who would have thunk it's Georgia against Alabama? I think that's kind of been a lot of people's guess since really early in the year. And, a lot of people wanted this Cincinnati, Michigan, and it didn't happen. The college football playoffs were a little, a couple of blowouts for the most part. And you kind of have to expect it at this point. It's almost an annual thing, and that it is an annual thing. But I think that this matchup is interesting because they've played in the SEC title game, and both teams, I think, improved. Maybe Georgia, I think, improved since then. They dominated a really good Michigan team, and I feel like they have a better chance after losing by 17 in that SEC title game. So, Adam, let me start with you. Do you think that Georgia is 17 points worse than Alabama right now after that game? Do you see it a way that it goes Georgia's way and that they can top Alabama?
Yeah, definitely. First, let me apologize to all my Georgia fans out there. I picked y'all to lose against Michigan. That was a poor choice on my front. But yeah, me and Andrew, we talked about it last week before. I don't see that happening again. I think that was just, a bad game. Just chalk it up to a bad game. Georgia, they had what 6 sacks against Michigan, and Michigan had arguably the best offensive line in the country. So if they can do that again, I don't think they had any sacks against Alabama during the SEC championship game. They got to Bryce Young a little bit, but it's pretty elusive. He's kind of hard to bring down. That's the key. They can win that up front, get pressure on Bryce Young. We've seen him struggle a little bit under pressure. Cincinnati was able to get to him a little bit. They sacked him twice and they hurried him a couple more times, but all in all, he pretty much had a clean pocket. Alabama's offensive line played well. If Georgia can get to him early, yeah, they got a shot. Alabama, they lost another corner as well. So Stetson Bennett, he's gonna have to outplay Bryce Young. Is really what it comes down to.
It's a crazy thing to think about. The guy like Stetson Bennett, a former walk-on, trying to outplay the reigning Heisman Trophy winner. That would be college football right there. A lot
Be a
of
hell of a
that.
story.
Yeah, that would be awesome to see. But yeah, you talked about Georgia's defense. They didn't sack Bryce Young. I'm looking at it right now. No sacks and 8 quarterback hurries. Only give up about 115 rushing yards. But of course, Bryce Young had 400 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. So, Andrew W., I want to know, what do you think your keys are for Georgia specifically to avoid, a repeat of what happened in Atlanta?
I think Adam kind of touched on it. Georgia's got to win the battle with their front seven against Alabama's offensive line. They got to both pressure Bryce Young, and something that we saw against Cincinnati for Alabama, they got to stop Brian Robinson, because Cincinnati it seemed like they were so focused on getting to the quarterback that they just kind of forgot about Brian Robinson. Oh yeah, he's just over there, and then he rushes for 200 yards. So if Georgia can both get to Bryce Young and stop Brian Robinson from doing massive damage, I think they'll be okay. Winning is a different scenario because it's tough to see with that Georgia offense, because, as banged up as Alabama's defense has been looking, with them losing another corner, already losing Job, I don't know if I can trust Stetson Bennett in a national championship. It's tough for me to trust a guy who, he's looked good. He looked really good against Michigan, but I can't get that SEC championship game out of my mind. It's tough for me to think that something miraculous changed with Georgia and that Stetson Bennett can, become just a legend in Athens. Like if he beats and outplays Bryce Young, Hollywood couldn't write it. Like a former walk-on beating the Heisman, Alabama, Goliath, Georgia, to an extent, David, it would be mind-boggling to see that, but that's college football.
Well, exactly. And the fact that Georgia that's just been the monkey on their back. And when I say monkey, I mean Godzilla. And in Alabama, I don't remember the last time Georgia beat Alabama in such a huge game. And now you're talking about the national championship. They just lost in the SEC championship. You had the national championship a couple of years ago with the game winner, and it's just this giant monkey on their back. And for Georgia and Kirby Smart to be able to, avoid just keeping the past going, it's kind of like trying to solve the Hellraiser puzzle. You're talking about, can they win up front trying to stop Brian Robinson, which they actually did a couple weeks ago. He only had 16 carries for 55 yards. So that part was done in the game plan. But Bryce Young went nuclear and had 3 touchdowns, 400 yards, and the Heisman moment for him. So Andrew D., let me get to you here. For Alabama, like, how do you have a repeat performance? Is there anything that the Orange Bowl showed you that, like, oh, we need to do this now because they can do this?
I think in terms of like Bryce Young facing Georgia's defense, you're not dealing with Kobe Bryant and Sauce Gardner anymore. So if anything, shouldn't make things a little bit more easier for him now? That's kind of the way I view it. But in terms of like the key to the game, that is one of the main things I'm saying. One thing that's really shaken me on this game is, I know that not everybody here is a gambler, but when Vegas released this line, they made Georgia a 3-point favorite. If you're a casual football fan, or if you just go based off of what happened in the SEC title game, those weeks ago, you're automatically crunching Alabama +3 or Alabama money line to win the game. Vegas doesn't put lines out to make people win, to make people gamble. I feel like Vegas, they're trying to tell us something that they know, something that we don't. I don't know why they would put Alabama as the underdog if they were trying to make people lose their money, if that makes sense. I feel like if Liam was here, he would be able to explain it better than what I am right now, but he's backed off like on picks multiple times this week because this season because of it. I think Bryce Young, I think he's still going to have a great day, to be honest with you. This is still a strong Alabama offensive line. Brian Robinson, I still think he's going to have a great day. In terms of what Georgia can do differently, with Joe being out, I guess you just have to, just try to not put too much on Stetson Bennett's shoulders. I mean, I think that's really it, because you already know that Alabama's going to come up with the front seven, that they're going to try and pressure Stetson as much as possible. And if he's having a bad day, is Kirby going to do the same thing that Nick Saban did those years ago and just switch the quarterback like he should have in the SEC title game? This is the one room that Kirby has always felt stagger upon during his time as the Georgia head coach. I'd like to see what Zamir White and James Cook can do this time around against this Alabama defense. What the hell just happened? Something just flew over here. But I want to see how these Georgia running backs can produce. This is still a top 5 running defense in Alabama in the country. We'll just see what goes with them. I'm going into this game with a lot of questions. I don't know why Vegas made Georgia the favorite in this game, despite what we just saw. Am I saying that Georgia is still 17 points worse than Alabama? No, but do I think that they're 3 points, that they just overturned 20 points just like that? I don't think so either. This is honestly a game that I'm going into, and I don't exactly have a whole lot of confidence in having a strong opinion on it.
I feel like that's how a lot of people are feeling, because Georgia, you've gotten kind of the best of both worlds, where their defense looks astronomically better than everybody else's, and then the offense sputters at times. But the last couple games, they found offense against Alabama. The passing offense was pretty good. Brock Bowers dominated, did his thing. And then against Michigan, they had 190 rushing yards, and Stetson Bennett still did his thing too. And so it's like, the offense seems to be coming together. And not to mention against Michigan, that was a dominant defense. And Michigan didn't have a sack either, only had 2 tackles for loss. Couldn't stop the run, couldn't stop Stetson Bennett, which didn't seem to be a difficult task for anybody all season long. But he's starting to come into form, and some of those targets are starting to kind of pick it up a little bit, especially Brock Bowers. But you talked about Alabama's secondary and missing Josh Jobe. And now, you have guys like George Pickens, who's getting healthy, and, A.D. Mitchell. They have to get those guys involved. And you talked about the run game. That is my biggest question, honestly, is that Georgia Bulldogs rushing offense, good enough to win a national championship? Because to me, I feel like they have this committee that's been effective, but I feel like Alabama knows that team. They know Zamir White enough to be able to stop that. And I just don't know if Zamir White and James Cook and McIntosh and those guys, I don't know if they're, better than Brian Robinson, and if they're better than, they're able to kind of put their dent on this game. I could be wrong, but I just haven't really seen it against, lining them up on paper and against this Alabama defense and Will Anderson and that front seven. I don't think they're able to kind of turn the game. I don't know. Does anybody else have any thoughts on that part of the game?
I agree with what you said about White and Cook. I think that especially Cook, in my opinion, if Cook can make a big play out of the backfield, in my opinion, probably receiving, it gives Georgia that upper hand, because if Georgia's going to win this football game, they're not going to win it in a shootout. They're not going to win 42-40. They're going to win, a 17-13 slugfest where defense rules all. So if Georgia can get one of those big plays, like they had Bowers in the SEC championship, he had a big play. Unfortunately, it was too little, too late for them. But if they can get one of those big plays early, get a lead, play defense, they can definitely still win this game.
And they got to get turnovers. That's the other really big thing, because you're not going to, chances are, you're not going to force a lot of 3-and-outs against Bryce Young and Brian Robinson. I don't think they're going to hold Brian Robinson to 16 carries for 55 yards again, especially after what he just did against Cincinnati. So they have to, jump in the way of Bryce Young and, stop Jameson Williams. Jameson Williams was going bonkers against Georgia. So that's really my big thing. Does anybody have any last thoughts before we kind of move on and wrap it up here on the national championship game?
Oh,
Alabama money line, perhaps. Seems like a good deal right now.
Watch for Fedarian Mathis, interior defensive lineman for Alabama. Never gets enough credit for the amazing job he does, both getting to the quarterback, getting a little bit to the run, but something he does amazingly is, getting his hands up when the ball is out of the quarterback's hands. He bats down a lot of balls. You saw that against Cincinnati. I think he had like 2 in the first half. If he can do that a few times against Georgia, it's going to be tough for Stetson.
Isn't that weird that you're talking about an Alabama guy not getting enough credit? Isn't that weird? Because you've been all over Mathis all season long,
Yep.
since before the season even started, and so
Yeah.
I feel like you're the guy that's been informing me about him. So yeah, definitely a good point. It's going to be an interesting game Monday. I'm assuming we're going to have some sort of a recap show. Maybe we'll do a pregame show on like Twitter Spaces or on Twitch or something. Who knows? We'll assemble something. We'll have something out there for you guys. So one of the last things we wanted to talk about, a lot of our teams had some interesting seasons. I want to start with Andrew, because you got to go, Andrew W., you got to go to your games this year. You had a very up and very down time with Minnesota this year in your first year. A lot of us have been to college football games before. This was, I assume, kind of your first taste with the college football season. So just kind of break it down. What was it like to be in the student section and get to experience the college football atmosphere?
It was insane. I mean, you talk about my first ever college football game was a Thursday night, prime time, Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt, Jenny Taft calling Minnesota versus Ohio State. I get to see one of the most potent offenses in the country with CJ Stroud, who was just coming onto the scene. Then I get to see the 3 extremely talented wide receivers with Olave, Wilson, and Smith and Jigba. Obviously, the game didn't turn out how we wanted, but I mean, I thought we put out an incredible offensive performance, especially on the ground. I mean, Mo Ibrahim, before he got injured, had 160 yards in the third quarter. So that was pretty insane. And just the overall atmosphere that we brought, whether we were winning or losing, it was always super fun. I mean, how can you not have fun when you're around thousands of college students? I mean, it's impossible. Whether it's at the student gate where people are, doing chants, or you're in the stadium doing with whatever's on the video board, it's insane. And like you said, highs and lows. I mean, we lost a Bowling Green. We lost a Bowling Green in Illinois at home. That was like, we didn't have a bad loss away. We had 2 bad losses at home. That doesn't make sense to me, but all of that got wiped away last week of the season, Saturday after Thanksgiving. Best night of my life. Best day of my life. I was downtown Minneapolis from like 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. It was insane.
And you're guaranteed rate bowl champions, even with those 2 losses. Yeah, how does that feel? Do you think Minnesota kind of overachieved? Like, I don't feel like a lot of people were hyping them up before the year.
I don't know if they overachieved. I think they were underappreciated coming into the season. I try not to look at the 2020 season a lot because so many weird things happens, especially with the availability of Rashad Bateman. Was he going to play? Was he not going to play? Leaves mid-season, obviously, is in the NFL now, as he deserves to be. 2019 was special, and I think people kind of forgot. Like, after that 2020 season, they were like, oh, 2019 was a fluke. They thought we were going to be another version of what Indiana was this year. And we weren't. We were a talented team with an extremely improved defense. And I think that it's a lot to grow on going into next season. And one last thing, Joe Rossi's the most underrated coordinator in the entire country. He went from, our defense last year was abysmal, and this year it was one of the best in the country. So he needs more credit as well.
Well, how about a fan from, a program that has the best defense in the country, to Andrew D? I want to know you focus on Wisconsin and Houston. So from the Wisconsin side, what do you think? I mean, the season started so weird for you guys, but how do you think it kind of, just kind of wrap it up, everything that happened with Wisconsin this year, and how you feel going into next year. Do you think Graham Mertz hits superstar status?
No. I mean, I'm not saying that disrespectfully, but there's a lot of weird questions going with Wisconsin right now. They're going through a bit of a phase where I just feel like they're not dominating in-state recruiting on one hand. I think that's going to play a couple factors. There was an offensive lineman who played for St. Mary's Springs. I forgot his name already. I feel so terribly, probably because when he made the commitment, I chose to forget about him. But he ended up going to Notre Dame. We lost another in-state recruit to Ohio State. It's a weird time for Wisconsin right now, but in terms of how the season went, based on how poorly the first 4 games went, 1-3, losing to the likes of Penn State at home, that should have been a win. Getting absolutely obliterated in that fourth quarter to Notre Dame, getting obliterated in that second half against Michigan at home. It's never how you want to start the season. But in terms of how the rest of the way went, it was about patience more than anything else. I mean, they, even after those 3 losses, they still had a top 3 defense in the country, which is insane to think about. I remember there was a stat after that Michigan game that said that whenever Graham Mertz was on the field, the Wisconsin offense was expected to lose points more than it was expected to gain points, as in it was more likely that he was going to throw a pick 6 than he was going to throw a touchdown pass. That's essentially what these metrics said, which was, I got to be honest with you, somewhat of a hard truth to swallow at the point. But, sure, we got the huge win over Iowa midseason. The game against Minnesota didn't go the way that we wanted to. I'll be honest, frank with that. Las Vegas Bowl really ain't the biggest bowl out there, but you know what? They still got a bowl win, and I think that's the most positive that you got to look at a season is, did you at least win your bowl game? Because if you lose your bowl game, you essentially feel terrible about the rest of the season. If you can at least win a bowl game at the end, you don't feel as bad, even if it's a terrible bowl game to play. Trust me, we played in the Mayo Bowl last year, and I still felt good after that season. In terms of Wisconsin side next year, I'm going to give Graham Mertz the Clayton Tune treatment. And this is what I mean by that. The first 2 years were not that good, but if you cannot be the guy during your 3rd season, then you really got to look at the head coach or whoever the coordinator is and be like, why have you not done your job with this guy? And Joe Rudolph, he has just left Wisconsin to go to Virginia Tech. That's might put a hamper, because we're going to essentially be looking for a new offensive coordinator, a new offensive line coach. Mertz is going to be in a bit of a tough situation going into next season. We'll see how he progresses. I'm feeling a little lukewarm about next season, but I've had times where I've looked at a season negatively in the preview or right before it, and it kind of turns around and goes better. I thought that way in 2016, 2017 when they won the Con and Orange Bowl back-to-back years, but it's more of a just wait and see. I truthfully have no true expectations for 2022.
I'm just realizing that I think I'm the only one in here whose team didn't win a bowl. Actually, I'm an Oregon fan. For those who are listening and watching. Oh yeah,
at least they played in one.
But you didn't. Yeah, you didn't lose a bowl game, so I guess my point still stands. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you go into next year with year 2 of Steve Sarkisian, Adam, of being a Longhorns fan and all the craziness that kind of happened this off season? How are you feeling?
Right now, because the season hasn't started, I'm gonna keep. I'm excited. I'm ready. I'm kind of anxious. Last year was absolutely embarrassing for myself, and I speak for all Texas fans. But now as we're going to the SEC, we're jumping ship, and then we can't beat Kansas. Andrew's talking about losing to Bowling Green. We lost to Kansas twice now in the last 3 or 4 years. So it's last season was definitely kept my head low, But next season, got good recruiting class. Very excited. Not too excited because we've seen this with Texas. recruiting has never really been a problem for the Longhorns. Charlie Strong recruited fine. Tom Herman recruited great. The problem was ever since Mac Brown left, we just can't develop talent. It's kind of like what Andrew said. You can recruit all you want, but if they don't get better, then it means absolutely nothing. So we'll see what Steve Sarkisian does if he can develop that talent because it's there. He has Xavier Worthy, Bijan Robinson, Jordan Whittington's coming back as well. So he has all the weapons you can ask for. Finally got his quarterback now too. So I'm excited. I'm ready for it. I'm going to be going to the Texas versus Alabama game as well. We got Alabama week 2. We want Bama. So I'm ready for it. They're going to be coming to Austin. We're going to show them what the SEC is going to be experiencing when we get there eventually. Who knows when that is, but
I gotta hold you to it because you just said you can't get too excited, but you were the one the day that Quinn Ewers committed.
We're back.
To Texas. You had an article that said Texas is back. So
Texas is back.
People were going nuts about that. So I just got to hold you to that because that was quite a journey. I had a feeling something was coming because Quinn Ewers committed once and then he left to go to Ohio State, got absolutely gypped out of playing because CJ Stroud went bonkers, and then he comes back. I didn't know how Texas fans were going to feel, honestly, because he left the first time.
Did you watch Texas quarterbacks play this year? What do you mean you think how we would feel? We want to win.
That's fair. But I just didn't know because, you saw how some people felt with Fresno State and Jake Haener, him leaving and then coming back. They're calling him a traitor, that whole thing. Texas fans, I'm not going to say they're sensitive, but they're kind of, they're very vocal. Let me put it that way.
In Texas, Andrew can address this. All you care about is winning. If you win football games, it doesn't matter who's doing it or how they're doing it. As long as they win, that's all that matters.
It's true. They don't care. They don't care how they legit do not care how they win it. I guarantee you that, let's just say a money laundering scandal was to happen, that violated NIL rules. And let's just say they won a national title before it went public. They're going to still be fine with it after it goes public. That's just how it is.
Pretty much.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah. And speaking from someone whose team did not win a bowl game and whose team, lost their head coach, entire coaching staff, a huge chunk of the recruiting class. I mean, what a first year to be covering it for Ducks Digest. I mean, that's every day I wake up like, what the hell is going to happen today kind of thing for a good couple week stretch. It's still at this point kind of still that way, even though the coaching staff's starting to take form, the recruiting class still have a lot of questions, but we'll see. Man, I mean, you could not have. It's just the most Oregon-esque season. I feel like you start out hot, you get everybody excited, you beat Ohio State, which I still don't know how the hell that even happened. Still to this day, how that happened. It's just the most Oregon season. I feel like I try not to get too excited either because I've been heartbroken many a time in the past with national championship expectations, college football playoff expectations, and I just had this feeling like it's gonna hit hard. And I felt like that Utah game, even in August, I felt like that Utah game in Salt Lake City was gonna be the one. And I didn't expect it going the way that it did with what was it, 38-7. I drank quite a bit that night, so I try not to remember, but.
And I think you told us that you don't really. I remember you telling me multiple times that you don't really like drinking either.
Well, this season changed. After both the Utah games, there you go. After both,
I know it's a Corona, Adam. Trust me, I know the color of it as soon as it went down. Well, a couple times. Do you at least have salt and lime on that thing?
I don't. In a hurry.
What the hell?
We're from Texas. We don't need that. We use a Rona. Good.
Oh man, yeah. The first Utah game, I was not feeling good throughout the season about going into that matchup, and then the day of, I was just getting Arizona State 2019 vibes. I was like, I'm not feeling good. I think Oregon was good enough to beat them. They just didn't show up either time. And it was funny because everybody going into the Pac-12 championship, they were saying, Utah's not 31 points better than Oregon. I was like, are you sure? Are you sure that they're not? Because if you put Oregon out there in that Rose Bowl against Ohio State, I think Oregon got absolutely ripped a new one. I think they would have lost by damn near 40. And so all the credit in the world to Utah. They had a fantastic season, but losing 3 of the last 4 after starting, after being in the college football playoff race going into that first Utah game. I mean, just a complete flip upside down, just a complete kick and where the sun don't shine. And then to have your head coach basically be tuned out in November, and have the entire coaching staff leave. I've never really experienced that. Taggart was kind of, I felt like he was going to leave. I felt like a lot of fans did. And even when he did, it was just, get angry all over Twitter and then get over it. But the Cristobal thing was just different because
it felt like a complete stab in the back. That's what it looked like.
It did feel that way, but I felt like he left the program in a better spot than when he came in. And I feel like that's, the least you can do as a head coach moving on. And he's from Miami. His family's there. His mom was sick in November and December, and she lives in Miami. So that part I kind of understood. He said he didn't really think that position would open up for him. So I'm not super butthurt about him leaving. Would it be nice to, keep him around and have him finish what he started in a sense? Sure. But with the coaching staff that Dan Lanning has been bringing in so far, with the emphasis on, development and recruiting, especially and youth, I'm really excited. I love Dan Lanning. I love what I see from his defense. So I'm not buying in. I'm not saying we're going to win a championship in a certain window. I'm not going to scream that into the mountains, but I'm really excited for the direction of it. But I'm definitely bummed out about this season because I feel like that this was their chance, having Ohio State on the schedule, and winning that game. I felt like this was the time to do it because you don't get games like that. And now next year you get Georgia, you have a chance to do the whole thing over again. So yeah, definitely an interesting first season to cover with Ducks Digest.
I gotta ask,
portal and all that.
Is Mario Cristobal Cuban?
Yes.
Knew it.
Yeah.
Trust me, because his first press conference in Miami where he was like talking Spanish to like one of the reporters, I was like, that's a Cuban Spanish. Trust me, anybody that like is fluent in Spanish, you just got to listen to how someone talks and be like, yeah, that's Cuban. That's Argentinian. And trust me, I know this because with me being a Mexican Spanish speaker, Mexicans use a lot more slang, and he was pretty crystal clean. Here's the thing: Cubans, they speak in a very monotone, very straightforward, strict tone. I was like, yep, he's definitely Cuban. And I know it's Miami, like you're 90 miles from Cuba. It makes sense, but I just knew it.
Yeah, despite what Rod Gilmore might say, Mario Cristobal is Cuban. Yeah, because Rod Gilmore had this whole bullshit thing about him being a white guy. And then when he was yelling at Chris Hudson, getting into him on the sideline, that viral thing, he was like, he's this white guy getting after a black player, and he was making it a race thing. I don't know. And people were like, he's Cuban. What the hell are you talking about? Anyway,
what country did he think that the name Cristobal came from? My other side is Polish. I'll tell you one thing: it sure as hell ain't Polish or German.
Rod Gilmore, I'm not going to get into how I or Oregon fans feel about Rod Gilmore, but when we see that his name pops up on an Oregon game, Oregon broadcast, let's just say we're not thrilled. So Rod Gilmore,
it's like Packer fans and Mike Florio,
or Joe Buck and Troy Aikman, especially Troy Aikman. But all that aside.
By the way, we left out a very important part, and I know we're trying to wrap this up, but when you were asking about other teams, why can't we talk about redemption season and the third ward, man?
Sorry.
It's redemption season, man. That's all I got to say.
Yes.
Dana's the real deal. Clayton's the real deal. Even though Marcus Jones and Logan Hall aren't going to be here next season, best of luck to those guys as they go into the draft. But I'm really feeling something special next year. We're going to be better than Cincinnati next year. Even with Luke Fickell still there, we're still going to be. Cincinnati's team is going to be completely depleted. And sure, we've lost a few key players. Like I'm going to be interested to know like what our special team is going to look like. Demarion Williams is no longer there. We still have to replace our top 2 corners too. But I got a special feeling about next year. I really do. Like I don't think I've had this good a feeling probably in a really long time going into a season.
No longer a
Maybe feel the
basketball.
same way.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, the women's basketball team's pretty good too, but we'll get there.
No longer just a basketball school.
Yeah,
is what
there
I
you
mean.
go.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, we should clip that opinion on Houston, put it, YouTube, and put it on Twitter, Instagram, all that kind of stuff, because I feel like that's going to get some juice. I don't disagree. I just think a lot of people are, probably thinking Cincinnati with Luke Fickell's building. I feel like they think a natty's coming. I don't, but maybe.
Yeah, I'm confident in that. I just think there's too much talent. Like, we'll know who the quarterback is. I think when you look at Houston in terms of the season opener against Tech, you realize that that's not what they truly are. And I kind of wish the AP and the playoff committee would have realized that when the rankings were really coming in midseason. I think it was pretty obvious, especially after the SMU win, that loss, that second half capitulation against Tech, was not who the team was. If he just would have hung on that little bit, we don't know how far rankings would have changed. Might have been Houston hosting that AAC title game if they would have looked better than Cincinnati throughout the season. You just don't know. I think if you play that second half against Tech 9 times out of 10, Houston still comes out winning. But like I said, you can only play what's happened. Houston still finishes out the season with only 2 losses, absolutely killing whatever win total Vegas gave us. 2 losses. You beat an SEC team in their own state in the Birmingham Bowl. You just got to give all the props, to be honest with you. I don't really know the last time that I've looked back at this team and I was like, yeah, I'm proud of this team. Like, in terms of turning around the season, turning around the program, I'm not saying that this season was better than 2015 when we won the Peach Bowl, but this season felt like, damn, like you really proved everybody wrong. And it all started with the SMU game when we stormed the field. That was honestly like the start of the whole thing. I think Dana's, as much criticism as I've given him probably ever since his first year, I think he's got the program in a really good spot. The way that he's able to pick up recruiting, even on the last couple of weeks, has been phenomenal. Landing Matthew Golden out of Klein Kane, wide receiver who was originally committed to TCU, still a top, I forgot what ranking he is among wide receivers, but he had offers from a whole bunch of teams. Chose to play for a G5 Houston team just to stay in his hometown, and I think Dana's, it's what we talked about with Brian. I think Dana's finally got a grip of what Houston's all about. He's coached here before. He was an OC here. I just think he's got this program in a really good spot, and I don't think it's going to be a Tom Herman situation where he's only going to be here until the good is really good and then he dips. I think he's truly going to be here for a really long time. I think he loves the city. I think he loves the culture. I think he loves the university. He's got a great relationship with the AD. I'm really looking forward to what Houston brings within the next couple of years. And Big 12 chance within the next 10 years, I wouldn't be surprised.
With that, I think that's a good place to stop. Kind of on a light note. Everything is fruit roll-ups and ring pops for everybody. So, yeah, that's our show. We can't wait to get into the national championship. Hopefully, we can put together some sort of preview. Maybe the day of the game on Monday. Do some Twitch content, maybe do a little YouTube live stream or something like that. Maybe we can assemble it. Yeah, thank you so much, everybody, for your support of our podcast on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. Make sure to subscribe, follow, however way that you can support us. Make sure to do that. Follow us on Twitter, and check out everything on our website as well. So thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.